What would you do if your own family called you useless right in front of everyone? I never thought I'd walk out on my son's house, but that day I did. Okay? And just wait until you hear what happened to my daughter-in-law after I left. Trust me, you won't see this coming. You know, there are some days you wake up and just know it's going to be a good one. That morning, I had a little extra pep in my step. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and for once, my knees weren't creaking like an old rocking chair. I'd been looking forward to this day all week, a long overdue hair appointment. A little pampering, maybe even a stop at the bakery for one of those cinnamon rolls I always tell myself I shouldn't have. But hey, at my age, I figure I've earned a few guilty pleasures. I just finished my second cup of coffee and was about to head out the door, purse in hand, when my phone buzzed. Now, I don't know about you, but I've learned to dread that particular ringtone. It's the one I set for family, and more often than not, it means someone needs something. Sure enough, it was Harper, my daughter-in-law. Harper's a piece of work, always perfectly put together, always in control, and always somehow just a little bit dissatisfied with the world around her. She's got a way of making a simple request sound like a royal decree, and today was no different. I opened her message, expecting maybe a quick question about the kids or a recipe. Instead, I read, "Cancel your appointment and come clean the house. It's the least you can do. No, please. No, if you have time. Just a command, plain as day." I stared at the screen, half expecting it to start barking orders at me like a drill sergeant. Now let me tell you, I've spent most of my life putting others first. I raised 3 kids, 3 while working 2 jobs, and still managed to keep a house cleaner than a hospital. I've scrubbed floors, folded mountains of laundry, and cooked more meals than I can count. And now, after all these years, I'm supposed to drop everything because Harper can't find the vacuum. The nerve! I sat down at the kitchen table, my appointment card still clutched in my hand. I could feel my blood pressure rising, and not just because I was about to miss my hair appointment. It was the principle of the thing. When did it become my job to be at everyone's beck and call? When did I become the family maid instead of the matriarch? I thought back to when I first met Harper. She was sweet then, nervous even, trying so hard to impress me. I remember her bringing over a pie store-bought, but I didn't say a word. I just smiled and thanked her, because that's what you do. Over the years, though, something changed. Maybe it was the stress of raising kids, or maybe she just got too comfortable. Either way, the requests started coming more often, and the gratitude started fading away. I looked around my own house, still tidy from my morning routine. I'd already vacuumed, wiped down the counters, and even watered the plants. My to-do list was clear, and for once, I was going to do something for me. Here I was, being told, not asked, to give up my one little luxury for the week. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I could feel that old, familiar tug, the one that says, "Just do it. It's easier than arguing." But something in me snapped. Maybe it was the way she phrased it, or maybe I was just tired of always being the one to bend. I thought about all the times I'd dropped everything to help out, all the times I'd put my own needs last. Was it really the least I could do, or was it just the easiest thing for everyone else? I set my phone down and took a deep breath. I could almost hear my mother's voice in my head, telling me to stand up for myself. "You teach people how to treat you," she used to say. Well, maybe it was time I started teaching, but before I could respond, I started to second-guess myself. What if I said no? Would my son be upset? Would the grandkids think I didn't care? The guilt started creeping in, as it always does. But then I remembered something my friend Carol told me over coffee last week. She said, "If you don't take care of yourself, no one else will." And you know what? She was right. So I decided then and there, I wasn't going to cancel my appointment. I wasn't going to let Harper's demands ruin my day. I was going to get my hair done, enjoy my cinnamon roll, and maybe even buy myself a new lipstick. Because sometimes you have to put yourself first. Even if it ruffles a few feathers, I finally picked up my phone and typed a simple reply. Sorry, Harper, I have plans today. I hit send before I could change my mind, grabbed my purse, and walked out the door with my head held high as I drove to the salon. I couldn't help but wonder, when was the last time someone made you feel like the help in your own family? And more importantly, when was the last time you said no? Maybe it's time we all start remembering our own worth. After all, if we don't, who will? I'll tell you, there's nothing quite like walking into a room and feeling the temperature drop 10 degrees. Even when the thermostat says 72. That's exactly what happened when I stepped into Harper's house that afternoon. I'd barely crossed the threshold before I saw her arms crossed, lips pursed, tapping her foot like she was waiting for the maid to show up late. The whole family was there, too. My son, Mason, sat on the couch, eyes glued to his phone, pretending not to notice the tension. The grandkids were sprawled on the floor, half-heartedly playing with their toys, and Harper's mother, Evelyn, perched on the armchair, giving me that look she always does, the one that says, "You're not quite good enough for my daughter, and I'm still not sure how you managed to raise a son like Mason. Honestly, if looks could kill, I'd have been 6 feet under years ago." I took a deep breath and tried to keep my chin up. I wasn't about to let Harper or her mother see me sweat. But before I could even say hello, Harper launched right in, her voice sharp enough to slice bread. "Cancel your appointment and come clean the house. It's the least you can do. No greeting, no small talk, just straight to business." I glanced around and saw the mess dishes piled in the sink, toys scattered everywhere, laundry overflowing from a basket in the hallway. It looked like a tornado had blown through, and I guess I was supposed to be the cleanup crew now. I don't know about you, but there's something about being ordered around in front of an audience that just rubs me the wrong way. I could feel every pair of eyes in the room on me, waiting to see what I do. For a split second, I thought about just rolling up my sleeves and getting to work, if only to keep the peace. But then I remembered the way Harper had texted me earlier, like I was some kind of afterthought, and I felt that stubborn streak rise up in me. I've spent my whole life putting others first. But there comes a time when enough is enough. I looked Harper right in the eye and said, as calmly as I could, "No, Harper, I have plans today." My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding, so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. For a moment, there was silence. Could have heard a pin drop, or more likely, a Lego, given the state of the living room floor. And then Harper exploded. I mean, really exploded. She shot up from her chair, her face turning a shade of red I'd only ever seen on ripe tomatoes. "You're useless," she screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. "You never help. You never do anything for this family." She was practically shaking, and I could see the kids freeze, their eyes wide as saucers. Mason finally looked up from his phone, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, but he didn't say a word. Evelyn just sniffed and looked away, as if she'd seen it all before. I stood there, stunned. I'd been called a lot of things in my life. Stubborn, opinionated, even a little bossy, but never useless. That word stung not because it was true, but because it was so far from the truth. I thought about all the times I'd babysat at the last minute. All the meals I'd cooked, all the holidays I'd hosted so everyone else could relax. I thought about the sacrifices I'd made, the times I'd bitten my tongue just to keep the peace. And now, in front of everyone, I was being told I was useless. Well, let me tell you, I wasn't about to stick around for Act 2 of the Harper Show. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and picked up my bag. I could feel the tears pricking at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of Harper and her mother. I walked to the door, my head held high, and didn't look back. Maybe I peeked a little just to see if anyone was following me. Spoiler alert, they weren't. Mason was still glued to his phone. The kids had gone back to their toys, and Evelyn was already whispering something to Harper, probably about how I'd always been a disappointment. As I stepped outside, the cool air hit my face, and I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Part of me wanted to march right back in there and give Harper a piece of my mind. But another part of me knew it wouldn't make a difference. Some people only see what they want to see, and no amount of scrubbing or sweeping was going to change that. I got in my car and sat for a moment, letting the silence wash over me. My hands were shaking, but I felt lighter somehow, like I'd finally put down a heavy load I'd been carrying for years. I thought about calling a friend, maybe going for that cinnamon roll after all. Why not? I deserved it. Driving away, I couldn't help but wonder how many times had I let myself be treated like the help, just to keep the peace. How many times had I put my own needs last, thinking it was the right thing to do? Maybe it was time to start standing up for myself, even if it meant walking away from people who didn't appreciate me. And as I turned the corner, I realized something important. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say no and walk out with your head held high. Because if you don't value yourself, who will? It's funny how life has a way of turning the tables when you least expect it. Just a few days after that dramatic showdown at Harper's house, I was sitting at my kitchen table, enjoying a rare moment of peace with my morning coffee, when the phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID and saw it was my son, Mason. Now, Mason isn't the type to call just to chat. It's more of a text if it's urgent kind of guy, so I knew something was up. I answered, bracing myself for whatever family crisis was about to land in my lap. "Mom," he said, his voice sounding more tired than usual. "I don't suppose you have a minute to talk." I could hear the chaos in the background, kids crying, something clattering to the floor, and what sounded suspiciously like Harper yelling from another room. I took a deep breath and told him I was listening. He launched into the story. And I'll admit I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Apparently, the dishwasher had decided to give up the ghost, flooding the kitchen and leaving a mountain of dirty dishes in its wake. The kids had both come down with some kind of stomach bug, and between the fevers and the mess, Harper was at her wit's end to top it all off. Evelyn Harper's ever so dignified mother had slipped on a pile of laundry in the hallway and twisted her ankle. Mason said the house looked like a war zone, and Harper was not handling it well. I could practically hear the air quotes around that last part. Now, I'm not one to take pleasure in other people's misfortune, especially not my own family's. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a tiny bit vindicated. After all, just a few days ago, I was useless. Not needed, not appreciated, just in the way. And now, suddenly, my absence was being felt in a big way. Isn't it funny how quickly things can change? Mason hesitated, then asked if I could come over and help out. I could tell he was embarrassed to ask, probably remembering how Harper had treated me. I paused for a moment, thinking about what to say. Part of me wanted to rush right over, roll up my sleeves, and fix everything like furs. And fix everything like I always did. But another part of me knew that wouldn't solve the real problem. This wasn't about dirty dishes or sick kids. It was about respect. And the lack of it. Before I could answer, Mason said, "Harper wants to talk to you." That caught me off guard. I could hear the phone being passed, and then Harper's voice came on the line. She sounded different, smaller somehow, and not nearly as sure of herself as usual. "Hi," she said, her voice trembling just a little. I know things got out of hand the other day. I'm sorry. Shouldn't have said what I did." I waited, letting the silence stretch. I wanted her to say more, to really mean it. After a moment, she continued, I need someone to talk to. Not to clean, not to fix everything, just to talk. I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what to do." That was the moment my heart softened. Because as much as Harper could drive me up the wall, I knew what it felt like to be overwhelmed, to feel like you're drowning and no one's throwing you a lifeline. I remembered those days when my kids were little, when the house was a mess, and the bills were piling up, and I felt like I was failing at everything. I remembered wishing someone would just sit with me, listen, and remind me that I wasn't alone. So I told Harper I'd come over, but only to talk. I made it clear I wasn't there to clean or babysit or play the hero. I wanted her to know that respect goes both ways, and that I wasn't going to let myself be taken for granted anymore. When I arrived, the house was even worse than I'd imagined. Dishes were stacked in precarious towers. The kids were curled up on the couch, looking pale and miserable. And Evelyn was sitting in the recliner with her foot propped up, looking more annoyed than injured. Harper met me at the door, her eyes red and puffy. She didn't say anything at first, just hugged me, something she'd never done before. We sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the chaos, and she started to talk. Really talk, she told me. How hard it was to keep up with everything, how she felt like she was failing as a mother and a wife, how she missed having her own mom to lean on. She admitted she'd taken her stress out on me, and that she was sorry for what she'd said. I listened, just like I'd wanted someone to do for me all those years ago. I didn't offer solutions or jump up to start cleaning. I just let her get it all out. And you know what? By the end of it, she looked lighter. Like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. We laughed a little, cried a little, and for the first time I felt like we were actually connecting, not as mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but as two women just trying to do their best. I told her that respect is a two-way street, and that I was always willing to help, but not at the expense of my own dignity. As I left that day, I realized that sometimes the universe does the cleaning for you. Sometimes it takes a little chaos for people to see what really matters. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just be. They're not to fix everything, but to remind someone they're not alone. A few days after the chaos had settled, Harper called and invited me over for coffee. I'll admit I hesitated for a moment. Old habits die hard, and part of me wondered if I'd walk in and find a mop and bucket waiting for me. But something in her voice was different, softer, more genuine. So I said yes, and the next morning I found myself standing on her porch. A little nervous, but mostly curious about what this new chapter might look like. When I walked in, the house was still a little messy, crumbs on the counter, stray sock under the coffee table, and a faint smell of Lysol in the air. But you know what? It felt lived in, not chaotic. Harper greeted me with a smile, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was being welcomed as a guest, not summoned as the help. She poured us both a cup of coffee, and we sat at the kitchen table, the morning sun streaming through the window. There was a moment of comfortable silence, the kind that only comes after a storm has passed. Then Harper looked at me, her eyes a little watery, and said, "I owe you an apology for everything. For what I said, for how I acted, for not seeing how much you do for us." She took a shaky breath and added, "I was overwhelmed, and I took it out on you. I'm really sorry." I could see she meant it, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "We all have our moments, Harper. Lord knows I've had mine. But I'm glad you said something. It means a lot." And then, as if a dam had broken, we both started laughing. Not polite, forced laughter, but the real belly-shaking kind that makes your eyes water and your sides ache. We laughed about the dishwasher disaster, about the kids' creative attempts to help by making even bigger messes, and about Evelyn's dramatic tumble over the laundry pile. Don't worry, it's fine, just a bruised ego and a new story to tell at every family gathering. Harper even admitted that she'd tried to use the vacuum and ended up sucking up one of the kids' socks, which promptly jammed the whole thing. "I guess I'm not as handy as I thought," she said, grinning sheepishly. It felt good to laugh. It felt good to let go of all the tension and just be two women sharing stories and coffee. For the first time, I saw Harper not as the demanding daughter-in-law, but as a young woman trying to juggle too many balls at once, just like I did when I was her age. I remembered the days when I felt like I was failing, when the house was a mess and the kids were sick, and I just wanted someone to tell me I was doing okay. We talked about everything, about motherhood, about marriage, about how hard it is to ask for help and how easy it is to take the people closest to us for granted. Harper admitted that she'd always felt like she had to do everything perfectly, and that asking for help felt like admitting defeat. I told her that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say no, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, ladies, let me ask you, how many times have you put yourself last just to keep the peace? How many times have you bitten your tongue, rolled up your sleeves, and done the work no one else wanted to do? Just because it was easier. Then fighting. I know I have more times than I can count. But here's what I've learned. Sometimes saying no is the bravest thing you can do. And sometimes it's the only way people learn to value you. Harper and I made a pact that day. We promised to be honest with each other, to ask for help when we needed it, and to never let things get so out of hand again. We agreed that respect goes both ways, and that it's okay to set boundaries even with family, especially with family. As I got up to leave, Harper hugged me again, tighter this time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for being here, for listening, for not giving up on me." I hugged her back and told her that's what family is for, not to clean up every mess, but to be there when it matters most. Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in years. I realized that I wasn't just the glue that held my family together. I was also allowed to take care of myself, set limits, and to expect respect in return. And if someone couldn't see my worth, well, maybe it was time to let them clean up their own mess for a change. So, next time someone calls you useless, remember, you are anything but. You are strong, you are wise, and you are the heart of your family. And if they can't see it, well, maybe it's time to put your feet up. Pour yourself another cup of coffee. Let them figure it out for themselves. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and share your own experiences in the comments. We've all got a little Harper in our lives, and sometimes a little laughter and a little lesson goes a long way.